Welcome to In the Black, where we celebrate stories of transformation, resilience, and rising into the life you were meant to live. I'm your host, Araceli, and this space was created to amplify voices often overlooked. Women who've come through the fire with wisdom, strength, and heart. Whether you're here for healing, clarity, or just good conversation, you belong here. Let's get into it. Today's guest, Isabella, embodies the very heart of what In the Black is about, rising from unthinkable pain and reclaiming life on her own terms. 16 years ago, she made the courageous decision to escape a dangerous messianic cult after the devastating loss of her son, a tragedy meant to silence the truth about the leader's crimes. In the years since, Isabella has walked a profound journey of healing, reconnecting with nature, freeing her mind from programming, and transforming her pain into purpose. She has overcome brainwashing, narcissistic abuse, sexual and emotional trauma, self doubt, and guilt, emerging as a guide for others seeking to break free from fear based control. As the author of Putting on the Armor of God, a survival handbook for the Great Awakening and New Earth, and New Human of New Earth, Isabella offers tools for sovereignty, self healing, and conscious living. Today, we'll explore her incredible story, the wisdom she's gained, and how she's now helping others live empowered, sovereign lives. Isabella, welcome to In the Black.
Thank you, Araceli. That was a very beautiful introduction, and you covered my life experience succinctly. And I'm very much looking forward to our conversation today and sharing what I've learned from my experiences with you and your audience. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much. Before we dive into it, let's talk a little bit about you, who you are today.
Well, I'm a very different person than I've been at any other point in my life. I'm feeling that I'm going through probably the most transformation that I have in a long time, even though I've been doing uh, work and following my spiritual path for like 40 years now. But it's just been recently that my relationship with life and my experiences of life are really accelerating, and that's through my relationship with light, and particularly through sunlight. So I'm uh, basically, coming out of a long period of darkness and suffering and moving into more just joy at the simple uh, beauty and, relationships that I have in life at the moment.
And you live in Hawaii. Could you take us into your journey to, how you ended up in Hawaii and how long have you lived there and do you love it?
I absolutely love it. And it's when you hear words like paradise and, the healing islands and originally the land of Lemuria, or it still is, but that's we were like the last physical remnants of Lemuria. It's true. It's really is a magical place, and I feel very blessed to live here. And it's only after I escaped from the cult that I got to be here. And one of the best things that came out of that marriage was that I got permanent residency here in the US, so I can live here, and I've been here for 17 years now, and it feels like home.
I love that. So you've seen Hawaii transform from what it used to be to what it is now.
Yeah, it changes all the time. It's continuing to change. More people want to come and live here, and a lot of Hawaiians are being forced out because they can't even afford to live in their homeland, which is it's heartbreaking, really. It's like, what is Hawaii without Hawaiians? But it's just what's happening. I think it's happening in a lot of places. It's just tragic to see it here on this island because, we it's like I said, what is Hawaii without Hawaiians? And I'm
Yeah.
extremely grateful that I can afford to live here. But it would be good if we weren't being like pressured by a lot of people who come in with like truckloads of money and just buy second homes. So We have a large homeless population, also people living multi-generational family homes, and we also have a lot of homes that are vacant most of the year round.
Wow. Yeah, I've noticed. I mean, people have talked about Florida in that way, and I didn't even realize that it's expanding out to Hawaii and other places. So that's
Yeah.
interesting to see and hear. And unfortunately, I never got the opportunity to go when it 17 years ago, and I still have yet to go, and I hear it's so different. So I guess I've missed that opportunity, but I'll
No,
still.
it's still beautiful. You can't
Mhm.
change the beauty of the island, but the way that people live on the island is created like traffic problems and like I said, the housing problem and stuff like that. But the beauty of the island is untouchable. The ocean, the beaches, the Nepali coast, the Holly, all the um, natural beauty still here, and it is the like an ancient land, so that imprint is it's always going to be here. Oh, well, not always. I mean, as long as the land is here, the the imprint of ancient civilizations is really strong and
Yeah,
lives on in the through the hearts of the local people, and then other people who come because they feel called uh, to be here, to anchor the light, and share the wisdom that comes from staying connected to the land.
yeah. So before we step into the deeper parts of your story, can you take us back to who you were before the cult? What did life look like then?
Well, I'll set up how I got into the cult because that really explains who I was. And I grew up in a small country town in Australia, and on the outside, my family looked pretty normal. My mum was a teacher, and my dad was a vet, and we had a very comfortable life. Had tennis lessons and a horse, and we went water skiing on the weekends and camping. So we had two brothers, and it all looked pretty normal until my mother had an affair with a family friend and blew up two families. And she used me as emotional support. And I was only 12 at the time, and she dragged me through the whole thing of like my dad having affairs and just put a whole lot of stuff on me that really didn't serve me well. She was also has had a narcissistic personality disorder, and she was an alcoholic, so she was very emotionally unregulated. And she didn't tell me she loved me till I was about 30. So she was uh, so caught up in her own dramas that as children we were really just kind of left to fulfill our own needs, I suppose, unless it was a material thing, and then we got that. So my family was my first cult, although not in the like the known sense of the world, but my mum was the cult leader, and she triangulated my brothers and I, and used emotional blackmail and a lot of the cult tactics. And so I imagine my family pretty fucked up actually. But I met a man when I was finishing my teaching degree, and I graduated in outdoor education. So he was also working in the outdoors. He was a military background, but he left the military and was now teaching outdoor adventure activities. And when we met, I hadn't ever had that experience where there was this electricity is like an understatement of what the energy was between us, but it was powerful, and it was un like avoidable. And he was married at the time, so he went through a divorce, and we began living together, and we were together for 7 years. We had a son, and I was 3 months pregnant with our second child, and we were living on a farm and fulfilling my dream of being as self-sufficient as possible with fruit trees, veggie gardens, and chickens and all that. And he went off to work one day. He was starting a new company, and I got a knock on the door from a local cop and a neighbor, and they told me that he'd been found dead in his car. So that just in that moment, I knew that my my soulmate had gone, and all our dreams of being self-sufficient and having a family and, you know, a future together were just gone in that moment. And that really sent me on a very dark trajectory because I just wanted to die at that time. The pain was absolutely excruciating. I had no interest at all uh, in breathing anymore, actually. But I had a child and I was pregnant, so I knew that I didn't have the right to take anyone else's life. So I had to find a way back, you know, to claw my way back to finding where I could live because that home where we lived was on land and we were like chop wood, carry water situation, and I couldn't do that on my own. So I left there and went searching for a place to live and I went to India a couple of times and got guidance to live in this place, ironically called Healesville. And I lived there for a while and still was dealing with the death wish. And I could feel it underneath. And so I did a course called Dying to Live, which was a shamanic journey and course where we were blindfolded in silence for most of the course, like the 5 days leading up to this death experience, which was really a guided meditation. During that time, we prepared for our death by writing letters of forgiveness and writing a will and a eulogy. And then on the Friday morning, we did this meditation. And I put my whole heart and soul in this because I knew I needed help. And I had a huge out of body experience. It felt like I went a long way out or a long way in or whatever through the cosmos. And I got some guidance from my husband who'd passed over and an Indian guru who I'd been seeing, and was told to go and start training with this individual who I'd only heard of before. And I'll just say his name one time because he's been a very dark energy in my life. His name's Louis Dordompre. And when I met him, he just moved out of the trance channel area where, you know, he was bringing he's a trained actor. So what I say about him is, you know, he's not who he says he is. But at that time, he was a trance channel and he just received the guidance from God that he was all. He was the one and the all. He was an avatar, which is God embodied on earth. And he was here to save humanity. He was the second coming of Christ and the Messiah. And he invited me to his ashram in Southern California. So I left my children with my mother and I went to Southern California, and there was a lot of strange energy between us. And I lived in his home basically as the housekeeper. And at the end of that month, we went to Sedona. There was a grand stellium, and at the end of that trip, we were up on a rock watching the sun meditate, and he invited me to come up and cast my deepest desire into the setting sun, which is and was and still is to serve God. And then when I turned around, he was down on one knee with rose petals on the ground, and the group were blowing bubbles, and he asked me to marry him. So I accepted at that point, and then got the children and went back to live in his ashram / cult in Southern California. And we lived as a family, and there were group homes around with the other cult members, and they would come and serve their guru. So that meant like clean and cook and do the gardening and other like cult activities, meetings and things like that. And yeah, that went on. That hell lasted for about 7 years. And that's when things, and I'll just take a break there in case you've got any questions.
Yeah, I have several. Okay, I'm sorry. You felt what death in you or something that you had to resolve?
A death which is the wanting to die
Oh,
rather than wanting
okay.
to live. I really wanted out. It was
Okay.
just so excruciating living with that pain of losing my best friend, my partner, the
Yeah.
father of my children, and to have to go on and then be a single parent, which I never wanted to be. I had that just locked away because I knew it would be one of the hardest things to do. So there I was as a single parent. I had to give birth by myself. I had to choose baby names. There was no one to share the joys of, firsts. And it was just a horrible experience. What should have been a beautiful time was not for me.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
horrible.
yeah. I can imagine. I can't, yeah, I would never want that for anyone. So then shortly after he died, you felt this death wish. So then soon after that, you went to this person, right, to kind of work through those emotions and get past it.
Yeah. I
But
I was
so
looking for
immediate,
spiritual guidance, and I knew I needed help, and I knew I needed healing, and I trusted in the guru disciple relationship. I, understood that in the Hindu tradition, and I thought I was replicating that, but that was not the case at all.
did you know? So immediately, did he kind of pursue you and you knew that he wanted you to marry him? And two, did you know that he was in a cult, or this came after your
Oh, I
healing?
didn't know I was in a cult. I thought I was uh, a student with my guru in his ashram, and I was there for healing and spiritual growth and evolution. That's what I thought. And that's what he said. And that's what other people were, other, because he calls his followers disciples. So that's what the outward picture was presented as, which is just typical cult um, behavior to present uh, a false picture of what's really going on. And I didn't find out I was in a cult until uh, like 7 years down the track. No one told me I was in a cult, even though I found out later my parents, who never did anything together, actually went along to see a cult expert in Australia. And I don't know what they were told. I think it was something like, don't do anything until the kids are over 18, because otherwise you could get into some international legal battles if you keep the children or separate them like that. So no one said anything to me, not any friends, not any family, even though I'm pretty sure that most people, it must have been completely obvious to anyone who was looking in from the outside. And I know I was out of my, was probably seriously mentally ill at the time, so maybe I wouldn't have been open to hearing that in the early days. And I do hear a lot of cult experts say, oh, you shouldn't tell people they're in a cult because you'll just drive them further in the cult, and then you'll sever your connection with them so you won't have a relationship at all. But if no one had told me I was in a cult, I don't know what it would have taken for me to get out, because I was really and still am committed to my spiritual evolution and my healing. So my advice is, if you know someone's in a cult, to let them know, and also to provide evidence of that. Like, I think if my family, who have 5 lawyers in the family, so they've got the legal knowledge, they've also got the money and the time and the wherewithal to like get a PI and follow this guy, take photos of him, at the gym or with his Tinder hookups, or doing his following his sex addiction. Take photos of that, do a financial audit, forensic accounting, so I can see that he's taking money for himself, and he's buying other houses and basically stealing money from me and everybody else. So I feel like it's important, if you know someone's in a cult, present the evidence, and then they have a clearer picture, rather than you just sounding like a broken record.
Yeah. The next question is, what led you into the messianic cult in the first place? Would you kind of pretty much explain that? And then what kept you there for as long as you stayed?
I
So
can tell
then,
you, so that what kept me there for as long as I stayed. Firstly, it was my commitment to my spiritual growth and evolution, because he would always say, if you leave me, you're just going to take yourself with you, which I understood that. And I knew that, I did have issues need to be worked on, and I trusted that that was happening. And then the other reason I stayed is because we had sex one time and I conceived our daughter. That was like a month after I returned from Australia. So I had a child with him, and he adopted my other 2 children. So, as he promised, I had a family, and that was something that I really wanted, because that dream of mine had been lost. So he made a lot of empty promises, and that's what kept me there as long as I stayed.
can you walk us through the moment you knew you had to escape?
Yeah, I can. So we were all supposed to be like obedient to the guru and follow all his instructions. And if we didn't, or if we didn't please him, or if, you know, we weren't be reverent enough, then he would hand out punishments, like writing lines, or I was often kicked out of the bedroom and had to sleep in my daughter's room. And I had to, pick up garbage, pick up dog poop, be excluded from events. And I remember one time I hadn't been obviously, obedient enough to him, and my punishment was him going out and having like sex with a guy. That was my punishment. That was restitution. So he did a lot of mind fuckery on me, but the person who he really was the hardest on was my son, because my son could see straight through him, and he didn't want to. He didn't want to play the game everyone else was playing. So he got a lot of punishments. And one day he came home from school. The children lived fairly normal lives on the outside. Like they went to school and they did sports and they had friends, and I kept that, sort of normalcy going. But at home, it was anything but normal. My son came home from school one day and he was really upset. And he didn't want to talk about it. So I said, "Oh, why don't you go to bed? We'll talk about it in the morning." And in the morning, he was gone. And I knew that there was a problem, because that was so unlike him. And we called all his friends, and he was, couldn't find him anywhere. And we reported him missing on that Saturday afternoon. And then the next day, the cult leader sent his assistant up to look around the back of our house. We had these big electric towers that created like a buffer zone behind the house. And this assistant found my son with a fatal neck wound. And the cult leader said that it was a suicide, that he realized he was gay, and he knew that was unacceptable to me, so he killed himself. Basically, he blamed it on me. And once I got through the actual nightmare of that, like then again, I was basically going breath to breath for months after that. That was just, I thought I'd had my experience with death, but this was even worse. And I went along to see this. I knew I needed help. I really needed help then, because once again, I wanted out, but I had 2 children and didn't want them to suffer any more than they already were. So I went to see this guy who'd been the cult counselor up until about a year or 2 before, when he'd had his separation from the cult. And when I walked in the door, he said, "You know you're in a cult, don't you?" And I said, "No, I thought I was in an ashram with my guru." And he said, "Go home and Google cult characteristics," which I did. And there it is. Characteristic leader who's the arbitrator of truth, who controls everyone's everything, how much they sleep, what foods they eat, what they do with their time, who they're in a relationship with, whether or not they have sex. And I'm just, I'm going down the list saying check, check. And then there's the love bombing, where one day I'm the most beautiful woman in the world, and the next I'm the Antichrist and the worst person, the worst mother, the worst friend, so that happened to me and to a lot of other people. And this love bombing, and then we'd have that, the hate bombing, just to completely fracture the mind. And gaslighting, which comes from this 1930s play, where the husband tries to make the wife feel like she's going crazy by adjusting the dimness of the gas lights. And when she comments, he says, "Oh, I can't see anything, you clearly losing your mind." Well, that happened on a daily basis, where he would say that we had conversations we never had. I did things I never did. And just, I remember the first one was coming from Australia. There was all different brands of everything that I had to get used to. And he's so particular about everything. He had to have this particular toilet paper. So I took a mental note of what it was. And when I got home, he said, "I didn't ask for that one. I told you it was something else." So that sort of, that gaslighting makes people feel like they're going crazy and you can't trust yourself anymore. And that happened to me. Then there's also like the psychological operations, where we do these like staged events that require everyone to like focus their attention on him. Like he would go into silence for weeks on end, and we'd all have to trying to figure out what he's saying and what he's doing. And Another big one he had was when I was pregnant. He told everyone I was giving birth to the embodiment of Lord Ganesha, the Hindu deity, the remover of obstacles. So, just. And anyway, so I'm going through the list and check, 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 check. I realized I was in a cult, and I knew I had to get out. But that wasn't just so easy as like going home and packing my bags, because like I said, we had a child together, so he wouldn't let me move. And legally, I wasn't allowed to move within 2 hours of him. And I didn't even want to be in the States anymore. I wanted to be as far away from him as possible. So I was trapped that way. And he also blackmailed me, telling me that if I left, my other children would end up basically dead, same as my son, or they'd end up on drugs or prostitutes, or just broken human beings. And then he said, on a soul level, he said, if I left him, I'm basically turning my back on God, on myself, on my like life purpose, and my soul would scream throughout eternity once I left my body and realized the colossal mistake that I'd made. So the mind fuckery continued on until I was basically like clawing at my wrist, just wanting to end my life, wanting to get out, but didn't know how. And then I think what happened was he realized that if he kept me there, then he would have another death on his hands, and he didn't want that. So I left with my daughter and moved to Hawaii, and that's when my healing started, really. I started learning about cults, cult programming, narcissistic personality disorder, brainwashing, mind control, and realized what had happened and why it had happened to me. Like it's all well and good to say, oh, that someone's your partner's a narcissist or whatever, but what does that mean about me, that I'm in a relationship with that person? Realize that I have codependent. I had, working on this one, been a long process, but narcissistic personality disorder and codependency are both self-love deficit disorders. They just manifest differently. So I'm looking for love outside myself because I don't feel it from within it. And once I realized that, then I knew I had to anchor self-love, and that provides protection from narcissistic abuse. So that's really one of the main things that I've been working on.
Wow. So one day you basically let you leave with your daughter, but you had to. What happened to the other?
My son was murdered, alleged. I'm supposed to say allegedly, but now that I'm got a clearer mind, and I've also spoken to other cult members, and especially the younger boys, I know that my son was murdered to silence him because he was being groomed. This cult leader is a pedophile, and he's a rapist, and he's been grooming boys and engaging with, well, I'm just going to say raping because that's what it is, raping in mind, raping the men in the cult. That whole time, after we had that sex one time, he put me in a celibate marriage. He told me that I was too needy, I was too much like a man. I needed, and basically in the end, it was just celibacy was what was for my highest and best. So yeah, that's a different form of sexual abuse that people don't really talk about, but that was agony. So that was, my son was the oldest child. Then I had a daughter who was the one I was pregnant with when my husband died, and at that time she was living in Australia with my mother. I sent her there because she didn't need to be in the home anymore, and I could get her free and clear. But then I just had to work on getting myself and my youngest daughter out, and then my other daughter came to live in Hawaii with us.
Okay. Yeah, I thought there was three kids. I just
Yeah, there were
missed
three.
one for. Wow, that is. I mean, just feel like there's no response to your
Yeah,
story. Like, there's just not enough words or anything that can be said except for just giving you the platform and the room for you to share your story.
yeah. Your response is perfect because you're listening. You know, Thank you.
Absolutely. So once you escaped, what were some of the first steps you took to reclaim your mind and body from the years of control?
As I mentioned before, I started studying narcissistic personality disorder and codependency to understand myself. Like I really had to know why did I get into this situation? What is it in me that led me into this cult and then kept me there? So I, as I said, learned about the fact that I didn't love myself, and that was the problem right there. No self-respect, no boundaries. I was looking outside of myself for love and approval. And then I started studying cults. So I've researched all the main cults, all the big cult leaders, and then looking at cult uh, tactics, cult dynamics, and then see how that plays out in ways other than through religious or spiritual cults, because cults can, like I said, it mentioned earlier, cults can be in a family situation, even in a partnership, and also, and then there are group political parties. You can have MLMs that are cults. And then what I was able to see when I understood how cults operate, and what constitutes cult programming, was that as a species, humankind has been enslaved in a cult, and the same tactics that were used on me in the cult that I was in are used on a global scale. So I experienced the microcosm of the macrocosm, and I could see how the mind control was playing out through televisions and films and mainstream media and education and religions, and how we were being basically controlled to believe that life is got to be this way, just like I was in the cult, believing that here we are in an ashram, but really I wasn't free. And as humans, we really are being controlled and manipulated and enslaved. And until we can see that's what happened to me, and still until you know that there's a cage, in this case for humanity, like a cage for consciousness, then escape's not possible, because you don't even realize that you're being trapped, or you're being manipulated, or you're being controlled. Once one can see the cage, the mind prison, and all the ways that the strategies that are used to keep us unable to see that we are enslaved, then escape's not possible. So that's really where my consciousness went from seeing my smaller picture. Then it just got bigger and bigger until I could see more of a global effect of cult programming. And that came through being connected to nature, directly connected. So I haven't worn shoes. Well, if I have to go on obviously hot ground or whatever, I'll wear shoes, but generally I'm barefoot. So I stay directly connected to earth energy, earth being a giant battery. So I take that energy into my body and I'm energized by that. So that allowed me to move out of an extremely depressed, black, dark mindset, to feeling more hope and more positivity, and uh, more energized. And that's been fundamental to my healing, because without a direct connection to earth, we're really depriving ourselves of some of the most important uh, energies that are available, because there's no way we can be balanced without a direct connection to earth, especially electromagnetically, with all the EMFs and cell phones. And we're basically surrounded by a sea of electromagnetic energies, and we have our own vibration, and that can get totally messed up by what's going on around us. But when we're directly connected to the earth, that'll rebalance us electromagnetically, and also physiologically. We can get negative electrons, and that's basically means the body is going to be function optimally rather than in a suboptimal state. So grounding has been essential. And then the other thing that has really transformed my consciousness is through the practice of sun gazing. And I know a lot of people think that's some hippie bullshit, but it's not. It's one of the most powerful practices that anyone can do. It's free and it's life transforming. So as the sun rises, I look through like lowered lashes just to receive that most powerful energy. Like sunlight is life optimizing information. Sunlight will dissolve cognitive dissonance, like break through those like limiting beliefs, and it also expands consciousness. And then it's one of the most powerful tools for accelerating soul or spiritual evolution. So I practice sun gazing as often as possible, and now I can sun gaze when the sun's a little bit higher. It's also a good practice to do when the sun is setting, just to start off, because it's like I said, it's so powerful. And just receiving natural light. I've come to learn a lot about the benefits of natural light, and that can be from moonlight, starlight, and at the moment we've got the Perseids meteor showers. So from meteor showers, from light that's reflecting off water or reflecting off snow, from candlelight, firelight, all these lights. It's got codes in it, like codes that awaken DNA. And I don't know exactly how it works. My consciousness as it is at the moment is not, I just don't understand exactly how it works, like on a physiological level. I just know that the information that I take in through my eyes impacts my like pineal gland and pituitary gland, and then has its way with my DNA, which we've heard about junk DNA, and it's not junk DNA. It's just unactivated DNA. But at the moment, with the increase in light frequencies that are coming in through the sun, which is triggering all the chaos in the world, or the ring of fires on fire. It's because of the light frequencies that are increasing. So for me to stay aligned with all these earth changes, I stay aligned with the receiving the light and receiving the earth energy, and just spending time in the beauty of nature, because beauty itself, appreciating beauty, is just such a powerful healer. Just to take time to watch the clouds, look at the detail of a flower, smell the flower, smell the roses, walk in the forest and receive those, uplifting essential oils. The importance of being in nature cannot be underestimated, especially at this time when most people are living their life through screens, and children are living their life through screens. So it's been basically my connection to nature that's got me out of suffering. It's not that I don't feel sad or, angry or upset anymore. It's just that I don't suffer constantly. There are actually times when I can, I'm enjoying my life.
Yeah, I agree when you were talking about how the society is making us sick with, all the processed foods and keeping us indoors with all the screens, and people are just, oh, I'm so unhealthy. It's genetic. And it's like, no, it's not. Get out and move. And, it's free to get sunlight. It's free to get your steps in. It's free to do body weight exercises. It's free to, um, write a book or write poems or get creative in any way possible, like they did back then. And it's cheaper if you grow your own vegetables and do your own things. But a lot of people just want quick, 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 fast, fast, fast. And they're always just unhappy and sick and dying and injured and um, all of the negativity that surrounds us. So yeah, when you were speaking on that, that's where I was like, yeah, 100% following with you and agree. So let's move into your books. They're filled with practical tools. Can you share one or two that you believe are essential for anyone breaking free from toxic environments?
Why, what you said about listing the things that are free that everyone can do in order to optimize health and help us be better people, in addition to the being in nature, grounding, and sun gazing, these are all essential practices that we need to be doing as humans. And I think one of the most important things is to stay as human as possible. And interacting with a screen or living life through a screen is not, it's not it's really not in our best interests. I know I'm addicted, but I'm also aware of that. There are so many younger people now who don't have an idea of a life outside a screen. I just was actually writing about this today. By engaging with a screen, even though we're learning and communicating, it's all mental. And one of the ways that we evolve is through our physicality. So we need to be, as you said, out there walking and, talking with other people, making eye contact, creating art, um, dancing, listening, playing music, gardening, and being a good, kind human. These are all basic practices that are being forgotten or set aside for just, engaging with the screen all the time. And also the light from the screens, that's basically blocking the natural light that we would be receiving. And it's the natural light that helps us live with optimal physical and mental health and also evolve, because that's how we get our light codes. But the light from a screen is unnatural light, and that's either keeping us in a holding pattern or contributing to the devolution of us as a species. And I haven't really heard many people talk about this. I just want to talk about the whole black screen technology and AI and all that, and how it's being pushed on us. Is like, this is where we're headed in the age of Aquarius. These are all the most modern developments that are going to advance us as a species. I'm like, whoa, hang on a minute. Like, not really, because like I said, it it's all well and good to be receiving more information, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're evolving spiritually, because we need to put this information into practice or actually go out there and like do things, even if it's as simple as like helping another person, or like what you're doing. It's, I mean, I know that's on a screen, through a screen, but your intention is still to be serving the greatest good. So my advice is to spend as much time as possible being as human as possible, whether it's playing with your pets or, like obviously walking the dog or playing with children. Like, take them outside, because then now we've got, what do they call it, the indoor generations. They're really not engaging with nature. They're not learning through the natural world. They're not learning how to play with other children and negotiate and resolve conflicts and read body language, make eye contact. And that's just dehumanizing. It's totally dehumanizing. And that's really not advancing us as a species. So my feeling is that we're the technology, and what we need to discover is the technologies that are in us, because we have so many technologies. We have the ability to live indefinitely. It's been done by yogis before, and from past civilizations where beings have come in and out of bodies. There's a process called raising the chrism, which happens every month when the moon is in the same sign as the sun was in when we were born. There are these etheric fluids, so they're just between physical and non-physical. They're released from the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, and they travel down the spine, where they're alchemized in the heart chakra and then at the base chakra, and continue alchemical process. Travels back up again through the over 33 vertebrae, stays for 3 days in I think it's not sure which organ in the brain, let's say corpus callosum, something like that. Anyway, then it's released and it creates the light of the world. It can result in experiences of ecstasy, or something like being able to have like visions and foresight. And also it helps the body regenerate. And that's just one process that I discovered when I was doing my research that we have available to us. Like, who knows what else we actually, the technologies that we've got in our bodies. So I would rather that we spent less time on the artificial technologies and more time on our own inner technologies, and connecting with the natural world and with each other too, because we have in this whole idea of like, oh yes, well, these devices are going to connect us and we'll be able to talk to anyone from around the world. Well, we actually also have an epidemic of loneliness, because these on-screen relationships don't really provide us with really what we need as human beings, to feel heard, to feel seen, to feel the connection from other people. So yeah, it's basically to to be as human as possible, as much as possible, to spend as much time in nature as possible, and just to be good and kind, and listening to intuition, tuning into our intuition, which for everyone is different. I get I just call them ideas. I don't really see visions, but I do get like inklings, or I hear things. And I also get gut feelings, and I trust that information, because it's all well and good to, get this information, but if we're not a listening, or b following that advice, trusting and following it, then it it really hasn't served its purpose. So I listen to and trust my intuition, and that puts me in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, regardless of what chaos and dramas and whatever's playing out on the world stage.
Yeah, I like that. So, how would you help people recognize they might be under mind control, even if they don't think of themselves as being in a cult?
Well, firstly, to ask the question is, am I free? Am I living as a sovereign being? Or whose thoughts, whose beliefs do I hold? So it's a good idea to examine your beliefs about yourself, examine your beliefs about how society works, how the world works, and really through that introspection to, to ask the questions and then honestly answer them. And that's the process that I went through. I had to examine my beliefs about myself, that I was unlovable, that I was the problem, you know, and then realize, hey, that's not true. So that what you ask yourself the questions, and then is it true? Is it helpful? Is it a thought or a belief that I want to continue having? Does it support my highest good? Then you decide if that's a belief or a thought that you want to continue on with. And then once you ask those questions, then you can get more of a picture of who you are, because that's really that know thyself. That's fundamental. Know thyself, and then you can see how's the world around you functioning. Like, is everyone just following along with government orders, or following along with the mainstream dramas? You're hooked into the cycle, the fear cycle. It's important to have a really honest look at how the world functions, and then ask why is it like this? Why are people having to go to school for this amount, 12 years? Why are then people having to work 9 to 5, 5 days a week with 2 weeks off a year? Why is it like that? Instead of just, oh, this is what it is, and just going to go along with it or whatever, and get in, buy a home and get into debt. It's important to question everything, even whatever I'm saying. Just question that and find out for yourself. Take that step back and look upon a situation with new eyes and like an open mind, to think, wait a minute, am I am I being controlled here? Could it be different? Am I living as like I said, as a sovereign being? And then once you're in that, when you've realized that perhaps you're not as sovereign as you thought you were, or you're not really free, or you're living someone else's life. Maybe your parents wanted you to be, a teacher, and that's not really your calling. We get so influenced by our families and who they want us to be and how they want us to live their lives. It's important to break free of that program. And we've got schools that tell us that the world looks this way, and the government is we're all supposed to follow along and obey the government, because they've taken power that they have no right to. Like, no one's really got the right to rule over anybody else, and certainly not with threats of jail or fines or anything like that. I have my strong opinions about government. I agree that there maybe need to be organized systems of management, not a controlling system that you know tells us what we can and can't do on land, and what we should and shouldn't do with our bodies. That it's not right. So it's important just to be open and honest about how things uh, are, and then how you really want them to be.
Yeah. So, you talk about sovereignty and optimal health. What does living in the black mean to you personally?
It means living with my connection to God, to a higher power, source, all that is, as that's where I start. And then my intention and my heart's desire is to be of service to that infinite intelligence, that divine principle to God. So I offer myself and my life in service, and then I listen and wait for instructions so that I can carry out what it is that I need to do in order to be living in service to God, in service to the highest good for all. And then when I'm in that place, like I'm more in that place now than I've ever been, and I feel like the most blessed person I know. I have an abundance of sunshine and beauty around me. I have beautiful friends, a beautiful home. I have food. I have enough resources to be able to maintain this lifestyle. So that's what living in the black means. I'm not into this, like I'm going to manifest my reality. No. I mean, I'm sure I'm doing that. But what I found is by living in service to the greatest good of all, then my heart's desires have and are being fulfilled.
Beautiful. And where can our listeners find you, connect with your work, and get your books?
I have a website. It's feelingbetternaturally.love. And on the website are some of my writings, and my books are available through the website. They're also on Amazon. And I've also got some of my artwork and some of my videos from my YouTube channel, which is called Feeling Better Naturally. And I've just been mainly posting images from nature because for those who don't get outdoors enough, there is benefit from seeing images of nature, but also from hearing, the sounds of nature. And I have a Substack too with some of my writings on it. And just while I'm on that, because I did forget to mention, there are ways that you can bring nature indoors if you are unable to get outside for whatever reason, because our bodies need going. There's so much overload of information, and all the fear porn and all that drama. Our bodies really need to be calmed down, and being in nature does that. We have to calm our nervous system down. So you can do it at home by bringing plants inside, playing the sounds from nature like running water or bird song or ocean waves. And then you can diffuse essential oils. That's another way to connect with nature. And eating living foods, like even if you don't have a garden or even pot plants to grow food in, you can sprout sprouts, and by sprouting sprouts, whatever it is, like lentils, alfalfa, broccoli, mung beans, whatever, then by eating just a handful of those every day, then you're taking that life force energy into your body, and that creates optimal health. Source the purest water you can. Don't be drinking tap water, uh, even bottled water. If you can get spring water, that's optimal. But what you can do is leave water out in the sun to increase its biophotonic energy, and also bless water. So you can hold water. Like I often hold a glass of water up to my heart and just say a prayer that this water is going to be optimally beneficial for me, and then drink that. So there are very simple practices that can incorporate more nature and energy from nature into your life. So touch trees, bare feet on the grass, walk on the beach every day as much as possible. And then the blessings and the benefits, they may take time or they may be immediate, but they will come. And the healing comes too.
Beautifully said.
I'm so grateful for you, for the platform that you provide for people to come on and share wisdom and experiences and information and practical tools. It's also such an important part of my healing too, because like I was saying before, just to be heard and to be treated with respect and kindness too. It's really important for my healing. Thank you.
Absolutely. Aw, thank you. Thank you for being here. If something you heard today moved you, share it with someone you love. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can follow me on Instagram at In the Black Passion Project for more behind the scenes and guest spotlights. And remember, no matter where you've been, you're not behind. You're becoming. Stay in the black. After you got out of the cult, going back to that time in your life, after you got out of your cult and you moved to Australia with your daughter, and did you reconnect with your other daughter that was with your parents? How did your parents receive you? How did your friends and family receive you? How did that reunion, I don't know if I can call it that, go?
Horrible, awful. Couldn't have gone worse. Um, After my son was murdered, my mother blamed me and basically cut me out of the family and turned my oldest daughter against me. She blackmailed her and basically gave her my inheritance if she promised to never see me again. So my daughter, took the money. And then my youngest daughter was also turned against me because when we were living in the cult, the cult leader he triangulated my children. He would do the most horrible things, like tell them I love them all differently. That's just, you know, it, anyway, it ended up being, and he told them I was crazy and I should be locked up in a psych ward. So they all heard just horrible things about me for their childhood. So it's really kind of no surprise now that I have no relationship with them. And it's something that's just another level of pain that I'm learning to live with, um, trusting their journey and their choices and blessing them on their way. But it fucking hurts, it really does, because really did put my whole self into being mother. I had natural pregnancies, I had home births, lotus birth, where I left. First I had conscious conception, so I invited the being into my body. Natural pregnancies, lotus birth, which is leaving the placenta and the baby attached until the baby lets go the cord. No jabs for their life. They went to Waldorf schools, so kept everything what I thought was very, until I got in the cold, of course, and then it was all went to shit. But I tried. I really tried hard to be a good mom, and so this is where it's at now. And what I learned, it's another area of shame in my life, because to have daughters who have decided they don't want me in their lives. I know most people would say, oh my God, you must have done horrible, unforgivable things. Well, maybe I have in their minds. But what I'm seeing is this is happening to friends around me who've actually not abused their children in any way. But there's this, it's just like the way that families and societies being torn apart in different ways. We put our elders in like warehouses, so we're missing out on all the wisdom of the elders, and then children are put in childcare facilities at a very young age, so the family's broken up that way. Both parents work, and now there's this, I think it's called parental alienation, where the children, when they're older, will disassociate themselves from their family and say it was, and for them it might be the right choice, but it ends up being just part of that, the ways that we're being fractured, families are being broken up, and societies being destroyed, really, because these bonds that would normally be in place and be able to ride storms, weather the storms of life, are have been severed, and it hurts like hell. But I stay as present as I can, and enjoy my life as much as possible, even if they're choosing not to be a part of it.
Are you basically not in contact with your family at all?
Yeah, I'm on my own.
Wow.
Sometimes I have contact. One of my brothers and I have birthdays close, so we just send one email a year. My father just passed, so we had some contact there. I went back and was with him before he passed, so I got to see some family then. But it's one of those situations where it's a very, the black sheep of the family. I'm the scapegoat. And what they've done by rejecting me is given me my freedom. That's the way I framed it. That helps me feel better about it. But they're very much caught up in who I was. And this is something else that I've learned. And I even feel it every now and again when people find out that I was in a cult, it somehow made me permanently mentally defective because I was in a cult, like almost 20 years ago now. People judge me for that, that I'm weak-minded and easily led, and may have been the case, but I'm a very different person now. But my family still holds me as that, um, you know, completely messed up, crazy bitch that they still say I am. So it's better this way. It's better
Yeah,
that I don't have to play their game or get into any like arguments or have to defend myself or have to apologize. Again, I've apologized so many times to my daughters, to other family members. And, at some point, one has to move on from the past because it really is the past. And I can't change it. I can only change myself. And that's what I've been doing.
absolutely. Yeah. Gotta look ahead. So your friend, you have a good, your true family is created from the friends around you who support you and know your journey and completely don't judge you and accept you for who you are. And it seems like you guys have that
Yeah,
established.
I do. That's what I have around me now is a, a people who love and appreciate me and know that what I've, well, not exactly all my experiences, but understand generally what I've been through, and they love and support me,
Mm, that's
even if they
beautiful.
don't read my books. I think a long way outside the box of a lot of people. I've come to realize that, and I'm okay with that. In fact, we're born in a box, in a hospital box. We live in a box. We go to school in a box, drive a box, work in a box, die in a box, and I'm happy to live outside the box. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
I find myself in that same situation where I also was the black sheep of the family, and my brother he could do no wrong. I could do no good. And growing up, I was ugly, worthless piece of crap, never going to amount to anything. I was the rebel child, and I was not allowed to go to friends' house like my brother was. I was supposed to clean and date men who were 30 years old while I was 14 years old, and not go to college and not get a job. And I was like the rebel child who, respected my mom, always did the dishes, but I wanted to go to college and I wanted to do something different for myself. So I went ahead and got a job, and it was like her mind, it was like I killed someone. She was on the couch when I arrived home, crying her eyes out. How dare you? You don't know what you're doing. You're ruining your life. And I ended up saving money, moved out, paid for my own college, worked 3 jobs. Then I met my husband who's white, and she hated him, of course. And she didn't come to our wedding, did all sorts of things to get my brother and I to not have a relationship, to get everyone that I was the problem. And the last time we ever spoke was pretty much when they had me choose between my husband, who's amazing, doesn't beat me, like he's just a beautiful soul. And they asked me to choose between him or the family. Which
oh,
I'm like, "You guys are giving me so much toxicity. Why would I ever choose you guys? I'm gonna choose the guy who's amazing." So, yeah, no, I totally relate to, and I understand the sadness of separation from family, but at times it is so necessary for that separation to happen so that we can flourish and stay away from toxicity. Even though they think it's you who's the problem, who
yeah,
cares? You're never gonna make people happy, make people know the true story. And we're just a little tiny speck in the universe. And as long as I feel that I'm living my purpose and I'm always trying to improve myself and have a great relation or a better relationship with God, our creator, whatever, anyone's belief is, that we're going to, and we're doing good in the world and trying to do that, that we're going to be okay and it doesn't matter what anybody else's belief is around us. But yeah, no, being not having communication with my family, my mom and stuff has been like the greatest gift. My door was always open for her, always waiting for her to turn around, because I'm not angry or have any ill feelings against them. It's just I don't want them in my life if they're going to continue to have toxicity. So until they change, then I'm not going to be opening my door for them, if that makes sense. But yeah,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
I
thank you for
totally,
sharing. I'm so sorry you went through that. I can relate to so many aspects of your journey, but look what a remarkable uh, person that you've become. Like what a radiant, like beauty and wise soul. And what I reckon, like when you were speaking, what it occurred to me is, and actually it's not my idea, but I reckon those of us who had our soul story that was kind of going to be a little bit bigger and deeper than others started off going through hell, and that like forced us to rise and to ignore and to choose ourselves and God and love and goodness. So, that whole nightmare of childhood and young adulthood it's really just like the training ground. Like, how strong are you going to be? Are you going to be taken down by this? Are you going to stay small? You're going to put up with this shit? Or are you just going to bust out and get free and clear? Because you've done that. I've done that. And sometimes and quite often that does mean cutting ties with toxic people, and that might be family members. And for me, unfortunately, that also meant my children, because they've got their own mental health crises, their own traumas. And at this point in time, it is better that we aren't in contact, because I'm not going to be that. I'm not going to live in apologies. I'm not going to live in the, oh, I'm a bad person that's ruined your life anymore. I need to be living my purpose, writing, speaking, and just simply enjoying life. So well
yeah.
said. Well, you've made the right choices. That narcissistic personality disorder I reckon there's demonic possession, because they are evil people. They love to make people suffer. They love to cause drama. They really love to make other people feel bad. And it's demonic, and it runs through families. And the unfortunate thing is, it means that individual has no ability to self-reflect, no ability to say, hey, wait a minute, maybe that wasn't the right thing to say, or maybe I'm, not being a good person in this situation. And there are very few people with narcissistic personality disorder who can actually break free from that, because it's so debilitating, like on a soul level. Whereas if, for me, with codependency, that's treatable. Because that's how you can tell if you have a narcissistic, because that's been thrown at me that I have a narcissistic personality disorder. But if you have a narcissistic personality disorder, then you don't ask questions of yourself, you don't self-reflect, you don't change your behavior, you don't take any responsibility, you keep blaming other people, you're all the perpetual victim. And it's lifelong, right? You're
Yeah.
seeing your family. The day might, this is going to sound horrible to some people, but you may understand it, or anyone who's had a narcissistic mother. The day I heard my mother passed away, we'd been no contact for about 5 years, was one of the best days of my life. Like, I was finally free from her evil, because that's all she did. She just spoke disparagingly about me to my children or anyone who would listen. And even though we weren't in contact, I could feel that on an energetic level. And once she passed, I was I was free from that, and
Ah,
grateful that she's no longer that influence in my life.
mm, yeah. When I moved away from the town that she lives in, and I now live in Florida, I felt like I could breathe.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, not someone with a narcissistic personality disorder has a void of self-loathing. They have a bottomless pit of self-hatred that they try and mask by pretending to be someone that they're not, and also by manipulating other people to get the attention and the energy and the money or whatever it is that they, that they feel that they need to get, to get by. I mean, I could see that in the cult leader. He just had, I mean, he pretends he's the second coming, for goodness sake, and that, he's come to save humanity, and people kiss his feet literally, and, give him their bodies and give him their money, where it's really just a facade to cover the bottomless pit of self-hatred that's inside him, that's never going to be filled, and creates these insatiable desires for sex and money and power. And it's evil. It really is evil. There are evil people who are affecting a lot of people's lives. But it's by emerging from those situations that we become who we're meant to be. This is what I came to realize. So if we've come into these bodies, we're spiritual beings, light beings or whatever, and we've come into incarnation with, this is for the purpose of soul evolution. And people say we set it up. Okay, so I chose my parents. I chose when my son was going to leave or my husband was going to leave. Then I also chose those people who were going to insult me and attack me and disparage me, hate me, or whatever it is. I chose them. So I should be, and I'm working towards feeling grateful to all of those people, because they all played their roles brilliantly. So I should be like, thank you for being such an absolute freaking asshole, because that's what I needed. Like, no one's a victim. I mean, you can feel like a victim, or you can look like a victim, but on the highest level, I wanted, chosen, created my entire life experience, so I'm not a victim. And everyone's, like I said, stepped up and performed brilliantly. Doesn't mean I have to like them or associate with them or have anything to do with them, or just acknowledge that, rather than spend my time hating that person, or wanting to get back at them or expose them or whatever. Although with the cult leader, uh, extraordinarily, the Victorian government, which is the state that in Melbourne, there's the cult leader has a cult in Southern California as well as in Melbourne, and the Victorian government just closed. Well, it was a parliamentary inquiry into cults, so I was able to put it in a submission. I don't know what's going to come of that, but my life isn't devoted to making sure that he's jailed, or has to put into his cult business or whatever. But I'm on some level need to be grateful.
Yeah. Yeah, that was going to be a follow-up question. Is he still in the running a cult? Is he not getting shut down? And then also, now that your mom's passed away, is there a chance, or have family members now that they don't have that person talking negatively about you, have they now gotten to know you and given that chance to like blossom the relationship, or is it still too early?
I was so naive when my mother passed. Like, I'm straight on the phone to my brother. Hey, why don't you guys come visit me in Hawaii? I thought so naively that once her influence like vaporized when she died, that the dynamics would change. But that's not how it goes. That narcissists, or some of the narcissistic personality disorder, will use flying monkeys. Have you heard of that term before?
I don't think so. Maybe.
So flying monkeys are their bitches, basically. They're the people so they're going to be the golden child, which is what your brother was. I had a brother who was a golden child, could do no wrong, right? I could never understand that. So other siblings can become flying monkeys. Also, maybe even the other parent who's too scared of the narcissist, but they can also be family members, cousins, aunts, uncles, and also friends, family friends. And they can be like on the side of the narcissist. And they get told disparaging stories for years, that they come to believe that, I'm a bad, broken, crazy, like irredeemable person. So when my mother died, that those beliefs in those people didn't change. They still had their beliefs about me. The same with my children. They still had their beliefs about me, even though they didn't have my mother in their ear, constantly reminding them of what a piece of shit I was. So it really didn't change. And I don't really hold out hope that that will change, because they did have a lot of years of the same information being repeated to them about me. And in terms of the cult leader, he's business as usual. He's now living as an openly gay man and a very promiscuous lifestyle. He has orgies in the house and tells everybody he has an inner circle that he's told them they're the most spiritually advanced beings on the planet because they can reconcile the difference between who he says he is as the second coming and who he actually is as a little fucking sex addicted demon. And he has run the same scam on a lot of the cult members for 20 years, and they have to pay him, like it's called tithing. They have to pay him 10% of their wages or their house sale or gifts, inheritance or whatever, and that keeps him living his uh, promiscuous lifestyle with first class travel and clothes and jewels and all that sort of stuff. So he's still running the same scam. Interesting though, he's able to stay under the wire. So he doesn't have a whole lot of followers, which means he also doesn't have a whole lot of people out there who are going to be speaking out about him and raising the awareness, shining the light on him too. So he's done an untold damage to a lot of people, but we're only talking about like less than 100 people rather than, the bigger cult leaders who've got thousands and, across different countries and stuff like that. He's kind of, I think what he's done now, because he realizes that the spotlight's going to be is shining more on him and also cult leaders in general. There's so many cults and cult leaders being exposed all around the world. So I think he's rebranding and changing his like outward appearance a bit so he's not so much of a target.
The people who did leave, do you think that people are going to speak up against him and perhaps shut his cult down?
In terms of other people speaking out, it's been 17 years since I've left now. And I started speaking out about 15 years ago. It took a lot of healing to get to the point where first when I could figure out what happened. Like I didn't know that my son had been murdered. I didn't know he was being groomed. It was only when they were boys in the Melbourne cult who were then as adults came forward and said, yeah, he was grooming us. We were sent, their aunt, who's the cult leader in Australia, sent them to his bed. So he's, a pedophile. And then I find out that there's also been these like massage sessions he has for the men, like come and explore your sexuality with him. They're having sex. He's having sex with the male cult members. And so me understanding what happened took years. And there are other people who are only they were in the cult longer than me and they've only just got out. So they're sort of part way along their own journey. And a lot of people have chosen just to leave it behind. Just don't even want to talk about it. That's the past in the past. And I can totally understand that. And then they're also, for a lot of the men, they're so full of shame because they got raped and they got mind raped. So there are very few men who are speaking out about what happened. And also he blackmailed them. He said, if you talk about me and what's going on behind closed doors, I'm going to expose you to the wider community. And there was, there were people from cultures where homosexuality is very much frowned upon. So he held that over, some people so they're too scared to speak out. He has made threats that if you speak out about me, then bad things will befall you. Like he mentioned to me, your kids will end up drug addicts or on the street or dead, or you'll be in accidents and you'll be sick and you'll get cancer and die. He uses those threats to silence people. So there's a couple of other ex-cult members in Australia who are speaking out, and one of the like benefits of that parliamentary inquiry was that actually for the first time, there were more ex-cult members who came together and reported him. And and that was really good for my heart because I didn't feel like such a lone voice. I was really not holding out for him to get like handcuffed and taken off to jail for his crimes, but it would be good, for instance, for this parliamentary inquiry to expose his foundation, his educational foundation, is a cult, like listed in a website. So there is his picture, there's a description of what he says he is, and there's also the now what, this is a cult, this is how it's a cult, and then have cult members or ex-cult members tell their story, expose him like that, and then don't let any cult members in, cult leaders into Australia. Like have him listed, and so that when he applies for his visa, he's not granted permission to enter Australia. So in some ways, cut down on his ability to run his cult, manipulate people, scam people, so he can't run events and retreats and bring in more money to fund his enterprise.
Wow, yeah. So, how was the divorce process? Was it you guys were legally married, right?
Yeah, we got legally married, and the one good thing about that was that then I got citizenship, which allows me to live in Hawaii. So I didn't actually divorce him till like 5 years after I left, because I just didn't want anything to do with him anymore. I certainly didn't want to be engaged in a like court battle, because it costs like hundreds of thousands of dollars to get away from him. I think that's pretty, it's not that unusual for a contentious divorce. But yeah, it was contentious. We were in a lot of arguments about child custody, and I didn't really want him around her at all. And in fact, if she'd been a boy, uh, I would have fought a lot harder. But he's not interested in women or sexually abusing women in any way. So she saw him, but very infrequently. And the divorce was finalized like about 5 years after I left him. And also, I didn't have
Wow.
to face him when I was so raw with emotion.
Did you have to fly back in and see him throughout the
Yeah.
divorce process? And were you scared?
Oh my God, we had to go through this, it's called a 730 evaluation, which is an evaluation by a psychiatrist. And I'd been to see one, he was apparently one of Southern California's top psychiatrists, and Scheffner, his name was. So I went to see him to tell him of my situation, that he was a cult leader and I was trying to get out, and could I apply for full custody and expose him as who he is. And he advised me. And then when we were actually court ordered to have a 730 evaluation, he put up his hand and said, I'll be the psychiatrist who does the evaluations, even though I'd been to see him before, which had apparently like excluded him. He shouldn't have been able to do that. And the cult leader totally lied to this guy. I remember being in the waiting room with my daughter. We were supposed to all go in for a session, and I could hear my daughter screaming. She was in with the psychiatrist, and then I didn't go in. I just waited, and she came out, and I said, "What's up?" And she goes, "He's telling people that it's you and I are the reason Josh is dead. That it was our attitude, our like homophobia, and our refusal to be devoted disciples and obedient slaves, that he killed himself." So then I had to go in with him, to have him and I have a session with the psychiatrist. And he said the same thing to me. And I flew across the room. I was going to rip his throat out. Like I couldn't, it was just so evil and heinous. And then he turns, like he's calm, and he turns to the psychiatrist and says, "See, this is what I've had to put up with." So, he knows how to play the game. He knew how to set us up. He knew how to appear to be sane and calm while we're the crazy bitches who are, you know, um, losing our minds. So it was a horrible experience, the divorce itself. I didn't get full custody. In fact, if I didn't get full custody, I wanted him to have visitation with supervision. They didn't even grant that to a cult leader who has, a suspicious death on his hands. The legal system is broken.
So, if he admitted to it, you guys being in a cult, how did the psychiatrist not waive that and grant you full custody? And how did the deaths that kept occurring around the cult not get investigated?
Well, he's the spin doctor. So he, instead of using the word cult, he's saying, well, we're a spiritual community. I'm a spiritual teacher. So he just sells the story like that. And I don't know how he convinced this psychiatrist of his innocence or his truthfulness. I don't understand. I still don't understand that. And how didn't my son's death didn't get investigated because he lied to the investigators, the police. The police didn't investigate the death as anything other than a suicide. They didn't interview any of the witnesses, and I was just out of my mind. I was just parroting basically what I'd been told happened, and really wasn't. I didn't even read the autopsy until only a couple of years ago. It was just, it was a horrendous experience. So I wasn't in the state of mind to ask for a second opinion or further investigation or anything like that. And by that, and now it's like it's too late. The witnesses are questioning their own minds. They're getting older. It's There's no way that there's the body's been cremated. There's no way to get a legal him to be convicted of anything. But have been two other suspicious deaths in the cult. Just last year, one of the longtime cult members took her life because she found out that the individual that she devoted her life to 20 years or so, and her son also grew up in the cult, she found out what he was really doing. And she couldn't live with that anymore, and she took her own life. And then once again, he spun that as, oh, she had mental health issues. Yeah, she certainly did have mental health issues, but it it was not, that's not really something that he could be criminalized for, because she did take her own life. It's just most of us know why. And then there was another death. He mandated that all cult members needed to take the jab, and one of the cult members had a really bad reaction and nearly died, and took him months to recover his health. And once he recovered his health, he was once again like ordered, or else he'd be kicked out, to take another one. And he developed what's known as turbo cancer and was dead within a couple of months. So, I mean, who's he to be giving medical advice? He's not a doctor. So anyway, he's he's I don't know really don't know how it's going to end. But I'm just using these opportunities to warn other people, mainly about cults, and especially just don't have anything. If you're in Southern California or hear about this character, Louis Dordompre, he's not who he says he is. He's evil.
Wow.
I think it's time. It's time. Evil's being exposed in all areas of life. It's not just cult leaders. They're basically being like cockroaches. The light's being shone on them, and they're scurrying out of the dark. But we've also got the evil bit and the corruption that's being exposed in government and law enforcement and the judicial system and Hollywood and banking. The
Yeah.
it is to do with the frequency of light. It's exposing what's been hidden in plain sight, and that's the
Mhm.
evil and corruption in all areas of life.
Yeah. Ah, I love how you tied that all the way around.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today and sharing so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your attention, your sweetness, your kindness, your the open, non-judgmental space that you hold, and your questions that shows that you do care and it does matter. And that's really important. And thank you for also sharing your story too, some of your story. And it's good to see you on the other side of, well, mostly on the other side of that hell.
Same to you. Thank you so much.